Welcome to the deep dive. Just look around you. Your smartphone, those, sophisticated business tools, even how governments spot tax fraud AI, well, it's absolutely everywhere.
It really is.
But the big question, the one we're tackling today, is how do these powerful systems actually handle our personal data, our information? So today, we're taking a deep dive. Think of it as a shortcut, really, into a pretty hefty training curriculum, Law and Compliance in AI Security and Data Protection by Dr. Marco Almada.
A very comprehensive one.
Exactly. And our goal, well, my goal, is to pull out the absolute must-knows for you. We want to give you those crucial insights, maybe even surprising facts, without you having to wade through, hundreds of pages of dense text.
That's right. And everything we'll talk about today comes straight from that training module. It's designed for data protection pros, people who need to understand what really changes when AI enters the data protection world.
Right.
We'll be focusing primarily on the EU's framework, so GDPR, obviously, and the new AI Act. Let's get into it.
Okay, so AI is everywhere. It's using our data. But let's get fundamental.
Yeah.
Why is AI such a big deal for data protection in the first place? What makes it different?
Well, it's interesting because personal data isn't just, say, an input for an AI, like information for a job suitability check, or an output. It can be both, of course. But more fundamentally, personal data often plays a structural role. It's what the AI learns from. It's baked into the training.
Okay. The training data itself.
Exactly. That's why, for instance, the Italian Data Protection Authority went after ChatGPT's provider, OpenAI, back in 2023. The concern was precisely how personal data was used in training that massive model.
Right.
So given how widespread AI is and this deep reliance on personal data, it just demands really close scrutiny, especially under EU law.
And it feels like this adoption is just speeding up constantly. What's really pushing AI into, everything right now?
Yeah, it's accelerating fast. There are a few key drivers. First, big advances in machine learning neural networks. Things that were science fiction a decade ago are now possible. Then, the cost of actually processing and storing data, that's plummeted. At the same time, computational power has just soared. Makes AI much more accessible.
Okay, so cheaper, more powerful.
Right. And think about the sheer amount of digital data we create every day. It's a massive pool for AI to work with, and frankly, a huge need for tools to manage it.
And competition.
Oh, absolutely. Huge competitive pressure. Businesses, public sector organizations, everyone feels they need to innovate with AI, sometimes leading to, let's say, very rapid adoption, maybe not always fully thought through.
So you get these clear benefits: efficiency, scale, like language translation, right? Or generative AI making marketing cheaper, or even things like tax audits that just weren't feasible before.
Definitely, big upsides.
But the flip side, what are the major risks we really need to keep an eye on?
I think the one that often surprises people is just plain reliability. AI tools can fail, and sometimes in really unexpected ways with serious consequences.
Right.
Well, take emotion recognition tech. It's marketed as reading feelings from faces, but honestly, the scientific basis is often weak. The results can be really misleading. And the other big thing is complexity. These models are so complex, it's incredibly hard to spot errors or biases before they cause harm out in the real world. You often don't see the problem until it's already happened.
That complexity makes total sense. And that brings us to the interplay between the new EU AI Act and the GDPR. How do these two big laws fit together? Or maybe, where do they differ?
It's a crucial point. The AI Act, broadly speaking, focuses more on the technical risks. It pushes providers to handle risks through technical means or by providing specific technical info.
Okay.
The GDPR, though, goes further. It requires organizations to use both technical and organizational measures. That's the key.
Right. So just meeting the AI Act's technical requirements might not be enough for GDPR.
Exactly. You could tick all the AI Act's technical boxes, maybe for a specific system, but still fall short on your overall GDPR obligations if you haven't addressed the organizational side, the policies, the training, the governance. It's a really important distinction.
Definitely. So the AI Act categorizes systems by risk. Can you break down who the main players are in the Act and how these risk levels work?
Sure. The Act defines a provider, that's basically whoever develops an AI system or model and puts it on the EU market under their own name.
Okay, the developer.
Right. And then there's the deployer. That's anyone who actually uses an AI system under their own authority, like a company using an AI recruitment tool.
Got it.
And deployers have specific duties, too. For instance, Article 4 mentions promoting AI literacy among staff, making sure people understand the tools they're using.
And then you have the really serious stuff, the outright bans.
Yes. Article 5.1 lists prohibited practices, things like AI used to materially distort behavior in a way that causes harm, or using emotion inference systems in workplaces or schools.
Wow.
Though there are important exceptions, for specific medical or safety reasons, or for real-time biometric ID by law enforcement under strict conditions.
So beyond the outright bans, we get into high-risk AI. What pushes a system into that category?
Generally, two main types. First, AI systems that are part of products already covered by EU safety laws, think medical devices or toys. If AI is embedded, it often inherits that risk level.
Makes sense.
Second, and this is really relevant for data protection, are systems listed in Annex 3 of the Act. These are applications deemed to create significant risks to fundamental rights.
Like what kind of applications?
We're talking things like HR processes, hiring, firing, employee evaluation, managing critical infrastructure, law enforcement, migration and border control, administering justice, really sensitive areas.
Okay.
There are some potential get-outs, derogations under Article 6.3 if the AI system's role in the final decision is truly marginal. But generally, those Annex 3 areas mean high-risk rules apply.
And for everything else, the not prohibited, not high-risk AI.
For those, existing laws like GDPR are generally the main framework, though the AI Act still has some rules, like Article 51, which says you have to tell people when they're interacting with an AI system, like a chatbot. Basic transparency.
Right. Now, to make all this more concrete, you mentioned we'll be using 3 case studies today.
Yes, exactly. 3 hypothetical scenarios to help illustrate these concepts.
Okay, let's hear them.
First up is the University of Nowhere. Let's call it UNW. It's a big public university dealing with funding cuts but more students. They're looking at AI for admin tasks, student services. They
Right.
have lots of internal data, and they have the tech skills to maybe build some things in-house. So they give us examples of potential high-risk uses, like student admissions,
Definitely high risk.
and maybe non-high-risk things, like a simple library chatbot.
Okay, UNW. Who's next?
Next is Digitoys, a small startup making smart interactive toys for kids. They use fine-tuned large language models, LLMs.
Oh, interesting. Toys and LLMs.
Yeah, so they're obviously very concerned about safety, legal compliance. Their toys would actually be high risk under the AI Act because toys fall under that category, requiring third-party certification.
Right.
Plus, their data scientists use AI internally for analyzing product usage, which also involves personal data.
Okay, DigiToys.
Next.
And the third.
Finally, Inova Hospital. It's a private, nonprofit hospital, very focused on patient confidentiality, but also innovation.
Uh-huh.
They want AI for HR screening applications, maybe performance management. That's clearly high risk under Annex 3.
Right.
And they also want to use AI with patient data for clinical practice, maybe analyzing scans or predicting outcomes, which often involves medical device regulations.
Okay.
But Inova Hospital doesn't have cutting-edge AI skills in-house, so they're likely relying on external vendors buying solutions off the shelf.
Got it. So UNW, DigiToys, Innova Hospital, these should give us some really good practical examples as we go.
Exactly. They cover different sectors, sizes, capabilities, and types of AI use. It helps ground the legal stuff in reality.
Perfect. So we have the legal landscape, the risk categories, but none of that works without solid security. That brings us to cybersecurity, basically protecting the data itself. Let's start with the basics. The CIA triad.
Right, the cornerstone.
Yeah.
Confidentiality, integrity, availability. Confidentiality is pretty straightforward, preventing unauthorized access, keeping secret secret.
Okay.
Integrity is about ensuring data is reliable, accurate, and hasn't been tampered with. Super critical for Innova Hospital's patient treatment data, for example. It has to be right.
Absolutely.
And availability just means the systems and data are there and working when you need them. Think about fraud detection. It's useless if it's down during peak transaction times.
Makes sense. But how does AI complicate maintaining, say, integrity?
That's where it gets interesting. AI's complexity, its sometimes black box nature, and how it constantly evolves makes ensuring integrity, especially against subtle manipulation, uniquely challenging. We often only find out about integrity issues after something's gone wrong.
And who are the people trying to undermine this? The attackers.
We can generally group them into 3 profiles. First, you have individual attackers, maybe driven by curiosity, sometimes a grievance like a disgruntled former employee leaking data or just financial gain. Then you've got more organized criminal groups. These are usually profit-driven ransomware attacks, large-scale data theft. They might even target valuable proprietary AI algorithms themselves.
Yeah.
And finally, nation-state attackers. These are typically well-resourced, state-sponsored groups. Their goals could be cyber espionage, sabotage, maybe disrupting critical infrastructure like a border control facial recognition system, perhaps to discredit it or sneak agents through.
Serious threats.
Absolutely. And understanding these potential attackers is why threat modeling is so critical. You have to really think about your specific AI system, its data, its context, and who might want to attack it and how. It requires deep knowledge.
It sounds like a constant battle.
Yeah.
So the security measures, are we mainly talking about reacting after something happens or preventing it beforehand?
It has to be both, but the emphasis really needs to shift towards prevention. Reactive security incident response, damage control after a breach is necessary, of course. You have to clean up the mess.
Right.
But it doesn't stop the next attack. Proactive measures, things like vulnerability assessments, gathering threat intelligence, penetration testing, they aim to find and fix weaknesses before attackers exploit them.
And that's especially important for AI.
Very much so, because AI systems introduce these unique risks that traditional security might miss. Most good security programs combine proactive and reactive, but for AI, that proactive stance is vital.
So what are those AI-specific cybersecurity risks? You mentioned subtle manipulation. How does something like, say, data poisoning work with AI?
Right, so remember garbage in, garbage out. With AI training, it's absolutely fundamental. Data poisoning is where an attacker deliberately messes with the data the AI learns from. Imagine someone subtly feeding mislabeled medical scans into Innova Hospital's diagnostic training data. The AI learns incorrectly and might start clearing sick patients. Or think of a student at UNW slipping false data into an automated grading system's training set to ensure they get high marks later.
Wow, that's insidious.
It is. And what's really chilling is how these attacks often exploit the AI's own intelligence. They turn its learning ability against itself. A related attack is a backdoor attack, where the training is sabotaged so the model seems fine generally, but produces wrong answers for specific hidden triggers, like that UNW student rigging the system for their specific exam answers.
Okay. And once the AI is deployed?
Then you worry about adversarial attacks. Attackers craft inputs that look normal to humans but are designed to fool the AI, maybe an image tweaked just slightly to make a self-driving car misidentify a stop sign. Or model inversion attacks, where attackers try to query the deployed model in clever ways to try and reconstruct some of the sensitive data it was trained on. Imagine trying to extract patient details from Innova Hospital's diagnostic tool by analyzing its outputs. That's a huge privacy breach.
These sound incredibly hard to defend against. If you had to pick one area to focus defenses on first, what would it be?
That's tough because they're all challenging. Standard defenses often just aren't enough. Adversarial attacks show how brittle AI models can be tiny changes, massive impact. And frankly, defenses against things like model inversion are still very much a work in progress, especially for public-facing AI.
That's so.
So the absolute starting point has to be rigorous threat modeling, specifically for your AI system and its context, combined with a very strong focus on securing the training data integrity. If the foundation is compromised, everything built on top is shaky.
Okay, that makes sense. Secure the foundations.
Mhm.
But even if the cybersecurity is perfect, you mentioned AI can cause harm even when it's working exactly as designed. This idea of the fallacy of functionality.
Precisely. Just because an AI tool exists and seems to function doesn't mean it actually does what it claims or does it safely. There are common failure modes. Well, faulty assumptions. Believing an AI can do something it fundamentally can't, like accurately read emotions, the science just isn't there for many systems. Then simple engineering failures, human error, maybe using outdated software libraries that cause wrong results in a medical AI. Very mundane, but dangerous.
Right.
Unexpected interactions, the AI encounters a situation totally outside its training data. Think of a medical AI faced with a patient whose organs are mirrored cetus and versus. It wasn't trained for that, so its output could be dangerously wrong. And finally, communication failures. Vendors might overpromise or even lie about what their AI can do, a chatbot vendor claiming their system reasons when it's just sophisticated pattern matching, or simply misrepresenting how a product should be used.
And these failures, even without a hack, can cause real problems. Let's take UNW if their automated grading system works as coded but has hidden biases.
Right. That UNW system might systematically give lower grades to, say, non-native English speakers or students from less traditional backgrounds just because the training data reflected historical biases. That's not a technical malfunction. It's functioning as designed, but unfairly.
Or their dropout prediction system.
Exactly. It might flag students as at risk based on correlations that lead to unfair stigmatization. Maybe it flags someone who took on a part-time job, misinterpreting that data point. That impacts GDPR principles like accuracy and fairness.
Okay. What about digitoys? The smart toys for kids. Different risks there.
Very different and very sensitive. Children's data gets extra protection under GDPR, remember Recital 38. So the risks include how that data is collected, maybe shared with partners, what happens if Digitoys goes bust, could that sensitive data be sold?
A scary thought.
And beyond data, there's the impact on development. Could over-reliance on these smart toys hinder cognitive or social skills, reduce real-world interaction? These are big ethical questions tied to the product's function.
And at Ineva Hospital. Even well-meaning AI for patients.
Even there. An AI diagnostic tool, trained perhaps on data predominantly from one demographic, might lead to a one-size-fits-all approach. It might miss nuances and symptoms for underrepresented groups or overlook rare conditions.
So it functions, but not optimally for everyone.
Exactly. Perpetuating health inequalities. That touches on GDPR accuracy, fairness, non-discrimination law, and reinforces why these systems are often classed as high risk by the AI Act. It's not just about the tech working, it's about the impact.
And looming over all this is the black box problem. Opacity. Where does it come from, and why is it such a pain for data protection?
Yeah, the black box. Sometimes it's truly technical. The math inside deep neural networks is just so complex, with millions or billions of parameters interacting in ways even the creators can't fully trace for every single decision.
So it's just too complicated.
Sometimes, yes. But other times, it's non-technical. It's trade secrets. Companies protect their algorithms like their secret sauce intellectual property. They don't want you looking inside.
And the impact on data protection.
It's huge. Opacity makes it incredibly difficult to comply with GDPR's transparency duties. How can you explain to someone how a decision was made about them if you can't see inside the box?
Right, Articles 13, 15.
Exactly. And accountability, Article 24. How do you demonstrate you're processing data fairly if the process is opaque? It also slows down detecting other harms, like bias. UNW might struggle to prove its grading AI is biased if the vendor contract forbids looking at the algorithm.
So we need transparency, but it's not always possible or even wanted by providers.
It's a balancing act. Total transparency isn't always feasible or desirable. Legitimate trade secrets exist, but that secrecy has to be weighed against fundamental rights. You can't just hide behind complexity or IP when rights are at stake.
Okay, so this isn't a static issue. AI, the regulations, our understanding, it's all moving. Which brings us nicely to the idea of the AI system's life cycle.
Yes, the life cycle concept is really key. You can draw on models like the ISO standard for this, because AI regulation isn't a one-off task, it's a moving target.
Like GDPR's data protection by design.
Exactly like that, Article 25. And the AI Act echoes this with its requirements for risk management throughout the life cycle. Risks change, tech changes, societal norms change. Your approach has to adapt continuously.
And crucially, this starts right at the beginning, the inception stage, even before data is processed.
Absolutely. Data protection duties kick in right from the moment you start thinking about using AI. Article 25(1) of GDPR is clear. This inception stage is where the organization defines its needs. UNW wants to handle student growth, Digitoys wants unique toys, Inova Hospital wants better services.
And translates needs into requirements.
Right. Functional requirements, what the AI must do, and non-functional ones, like complying with beta minimization under GDPR or meeting certain security standards. And then the big procurement choice. Build it ourselves, tweak an existing model, or buy it off the shelf.
This sounds like where shadow AI could creep in easily. Systems popping up without central oversight.
Oh, definitely. That HR prototype someone builds at Inova Hospital, or the chatbot the computer science department at UNW creates for fun, it happens all the time.
So how do you manage that?
You absolutely need an AI inventory, a central register of all the AI systems being used or developed. It's essential for compliance, for understanding interactions, for knowing your risks.
How do you build one? Ask people.
Pretty much. Direct requests to departments, setting up channels for voluntary reporting, maybe investigating individual queries when you hear about a new tool. It helps identify everything, classify it, and make sure nothing's operating completely under the radar, potentially violating GDPR or the AI Act. And remember, the system's purpose, decided here at inception, dictates its legal classification: prohibited, high risk, etc.
Okay, so strategy set, inventory started. Now we move into actually designing and developing the AI.
Yeah.
What are the key technical decisions here that impact data protection?
This is where choices about algorithms, datasets, performance metrics, software libraries, user interfaces, all of it directly shape how personal data gets processed. It's technically dense but has huge legal implications.
And legally, the roles become important here. Provider, deployer, controller, processor.
It's very important. The AI Act defines provider and deployer based on development and use. GDPR uses controller, who decides the why and how of processing, and processor, who acts on the controller's behalf.
And they overlap.
They can, and you can also have joint controllership under GDPR Article 26. Maybe Digitoys hires Innova Hospital's data science team to help build a health feature for their toys. They might be joint controllers for that data processing. These roles dictate responsibilities, especially with things like AI as a service, where data flows between different entities.
And securing the actual data for the AI, where does it come from and what's the legal basis?
Data sources vary. Existing organizational data, Innova Hospital's patient records, for example. Sometimes organizations acquire data, maybe from data brokers, though that carries its own risks. And then there's synthetic data.
The artificially generated stuff. Is that a way around privacy rules?
Not really a silver bullet. It can be useful, but creating good synthetic data is hard. It can still reflect biases from the original data. And sometimes, depending on how it's generated and used, it can potentially become personal data if individuals could somehow be re-identified. So not a magic fix.
And the legal basis for using real data.
Yes.
GDPR Article 6.
Yes. For large-scale AI processing, consent or legitimate interests are often the most relevant legal bases. Relying on necessity for a contract, legal obligation, vital interests is interpreted quite narrowly by courts and regulators, so it's often not suitable for broad AI training or deployment.
What if you want to use data collected for one purpose for a new AI project?
That's further processing. You have to assess compatibility. Is the new purpose linked to the old one? What are the consequences for the people whose data it is? What safeguards are in place? It needs careful assessment.
And sensitive data, health data, for instance.
Special categories of data, Article 9 GDPR, and the AI Act also has rules here, like Article 53. Processing this data requires meeting much stricter conditions. Innova Hospital using patient health data for an AI tool needs a very clear, specific legal basis under Article 9.
So during development, how do those core GDPR principles, fairness, accuracy, minimization, actually play out?
They're critical guides. Fairness has two sides. Fairly processing the training data itself, avoiding bias in the data used by Innova Hospital, and ensuring the finished AI system produces fair outcomes. UNW, checking its student assessment AI doesn't have a disparate negative impact on certain groups.
Okay.
Accuracy means using good quality data, but also ensuring that AI's outputs are sufficiently accurate for the intended purpose. Then you have data minimization, only use what you need. Storage limitation, don't keep it forever. Purpose limitation, stick to the defined purpose. Integrity and confidentiality. They all apply throughout design and development.
And the AI Act has specific rules on data quality for high-risk systems.
Yes, Article 10. It gets quite detailed. Demanding data is adequate. Relevant UNW shouldn't use student social media data for predicting library needs. That's irrelevant. It needs to be representative. Digitoys must test its toys on a diverse group of children, and as far as possible, error-free and complete. Though achieving perfect data is almost impossible, these set a high bar for high-risk AI, and frankly, they're good practice for any AI system.
Okay, the system's designed, maybe even built. Now you have to check it actually works properly and safely before letting it loose. Verification and validation time.
Absolutely crucial. You need assessment before deployment. Is it ready? What's its baseline performance? And after deployment, is it still performing as expected? Is it drifting? And thinking about data protection here isn't just compliance. It can be a commercial advantage, building trust.
How do you measure data protection, though? Are there set scores you need to hit?
No, there aren't really mandatory thresholds for metrics like accuracy or fairness in a general sense. It's highly contextual. What's accurate enough for a marketing chatbot is very different from a medical diagnosis tool.
Right.
You need a broad range of indicators, but also acknowledge limitations. Some things, like subtle biases, are hard to quantify. Measurement can be costly. Indicators might fail in unexpected situations, or frankly, people might just not look at them.
But the AI Act does mention metrics for high-risk AI.
It does. Article 15 requires appropriate levels of accuracy, robustness, and cybersecurity for high-risk systems, consistent throughout the life cycle. It doesn't set specific numbers, but mandates that providers define and meet appropriate levels for the context.
So what are some of those key metrics people look at?
For accuracy and classification tasks, you often see precision. If the AI says X, how likely is it actually X? And recall or sensitivity of all the actual X's out there, how many did the AI find? The F1 score tries to balance these. For predicting numbers like Digitoy's forecasting sales, you use things like mean absolute error, MAE, or mean squared error, MSE, to see the average prediction error.
Okay, and robustness.
Robustness is about how well the system handles errors or unexpected inputs. Can Innova Hospital's diagnostic tool cope if some input data is slightly off? Can Digitoy's toys handle unpredictable things kids do? Can UNW's chatbot stay stable if demand suddenly spikes?
Right, resilience. And cybersecurity metrics.
Cybersecurity can be measured quantitatively, number of vulnerabilities found, time taken to patch them, and qualitatively assessing the suitability of technical defenses, compliance with security standards.
And GDPR requires testing this stuff.
Yes. Article 32.1 explicitly mentions a process for regularly testing, assessing, and evaluating the effectiveness of technical and organizational measures. And Article 25, data protection by design, implies you need testing to identify risks early. The AI Act also has explicit testing requirements for high-risk AI, Article 17, and general purpose models, Article 55.
What about benchmarking, comparing AI systems?
Software benchmarking uses standardized data sets, tasks, and metrics to compare performance. The AI Act actually uses benchmarks to help classify the systemic risks of very powerful general-purpose AI models.
But benchmarks aren't perfect.
No, they have limits. They often test under ideal conditions, not messy reality. They might focus narrowly on accuracy and ignore fairness or robustness. And there's a risk of systems being overfitted or trained specifically on the benchmark data, which gives a misleadingly good score. Useful, but use with caution.
This sounds like where AI auditing comes in, trying to get a deeper look.
Exactly. AI auditing is still an evolving field, but it's about structured assessment. You can think of different types.
Right.
White box audits give the auditor full access code, data, parameters. Ideal for deep scrutiny, but can be very costly, time-consuming, and difficult if parts are proprietary, like Innova Hospital using an external LLM where they don't have full access.
Okay, the opposite is.
Black box audits. Here, the auditor has no internal access. They just test inputs and observe outputs. Much simpler, but less thorough. It's hard to know why something failed, and easy for the provider to potentially hide issues.
Any middle ground.
Kind of. Outside-the-box audits focus on reviewing documentation, logs, development processes, the artifacts around the AI. It's indirect, relies on good record-keeping, but can provide valuable insights.
It's a trade-off.
It is. You're balancing depth of insight versus feasibility and cost. Generally, the higher the risk of the AI application, the more you'd push for deeper white box-style access if possible.
Okay, system verified, maybe audited. Now it's deployed into the real world. But the obligations don't stop. What's this AI literacy duty under the AI Act? Sounds important.
It is. Article 4 puts a best effort obligation on providers and deployers to help staff develop skills, knowledge, and understanding about AI. Not just how to use a specific tool, but its capacities, its limitations, its potential impacts.
So it connects to GDPR's organizational measures.
Precisely. It's about building understanding across the organization. Training shouldn't just be technical how-to. It needs to cover the bigger picture opportunities, risks, ethical considerations, how it affects people, tailored for technical folks and non-technical folks.
How do you promote it?
Could be specific training sessions, providing clear documentation, maybe using publicly available resources like the Elements of AI course for general awareness. It's about building collective intelligence.
And what about individuals' rights under GDPR? Access, erasure. How does AI complicate those? It sounds almost impossible to erase data perfectly from a trained model.
It's a huge challenge. Exercising rights like access, rectification, erasure, restriction, objection becomes much harder with complex AI. How do you rectify data baked into a billion-parameter model?
Exactly.
Erasing data is particularly tricky. There's research into techniques for machine unlearning or algorithmic disgorgement, trying to make a model forget specific data points without retraining everything from scratch. Techniques like the CPR method show promise, but it's complex.
So it's not just hitting delete.
Definitely not. And data portability, Article 20, applies if AI inputs or outputs count as personal data. You have the right to get your data back in a usable format.
What about Article 22, the right related to automated decision-making? Is that only for fully automated decisions with no human involved?
That's what many thought, but a major European Court of Justice ruling, the Schufa case, clarified things significantly.
How so?
It basically said that even if a human makes the final sign-off, if an automated process like generating a credit score strongly influences that decision, it can fall under Article 22. The influence is key.
Wow, that's broad.
It is. It means if you use AI to generate scores or recommendations that heavily guide decisions affecting individuals, like loan applications, job shortlisting, you need those Article 22 safeguards. The right to human intervention, the right to express your view, and the right to contest the decision. Meaningful human oversight is crucial.
So deployment isn't the end. You have to keep monitoring the system in operation.
Absolutely. Risk management is continuous. GDPR Articles 25 and 32, AI Act Articles 9 and 26, they all point to ongoing obligations. And risks can change depending on how and where the AI is used. Digitoy's smart toy risks are different from the risk of their internal sales analytics AI.
How do you spot these evolving risks?
Two main ways. Ex ante, meaning trying to anticipate problems. Forecasting changes. Maybe new research shows a way to re-identify in of a hospital's anonymized patient data, or UNW's translation tool starts getting inputs in a new language it wasn't trained for. You might use expert panels, market reports, extrapolating from test data.
Looking ahead.
Right. And then ex post, learning after harm has occurred. Maybe a single wrong diagnosis happens at a hospital using the AI tool. You investigate why. The AI Act actually requires deployers of high-risk systems to monitor operations and report serious incidents back to the provider, learning from failures.
And when you detect a risk, how do you respond?
It's a mix again. Technical measures, software updates, fixing bugs, maybe changing how users interact with the system, the affordances.
Okay.
But also organizational measures, changing the context, maybe restricting who sees the AI's outputs, adding human review steps, setting up an internal ombudsman for complaints, protecting whistleblowers who flag problems.
So it's flexible.
Has to be. AI is dynamic, society's views change, new vulnerabilities emerge. You need continuous monitoring and adaptable responses. It really is a marathon.
Okay, let's shift to some more advanced topics. Fairness and accountability, core GDPR principles. But how do you actually demonstrate you're being accountable with AI?
Accountability, Article 5.2 and 24 of GDPR, means being able to show your compliance. And a huge part of that is software documentation.
What kind of documentation?
It's multi-layered. Documenting the lifecycle decisions, why this algorithm, why this data set, what tests were run, but also clear instructions for use for deployers, helping them mitigate risks, like UNW needing guidance on what kind of prompts are safe for its public-facing chatbot.
What makes documentation good?
It needs to be comprehensive, well-structured, use language appropriate for the audience, technical details for experts, clearer summaries for managers or auditors, kept up to date, and crucially, it should address ethical considerations and potential biases identified during development.
This sounds like it feeds into impact assessments. We have DPIAs under GDPR, and now FRIAs under the AI Act.
Exactly. A Data Protection Impact Assessment, DPIA, Article 35 GDPR, is mandatory for processing likely to result in high-risk systematic evaluations, sensitive data, large-scale, new tech like AI. It needs to describe the processing, justify its necessity, assess risks, and outline safeguards.
And the FRIA.
The Fundamental Rights Impact Assessment, FRAA, Article 27 AI Act, is mandatory for deployers using high-risk AI in specific contexts, like determining creditworthiness or eligibility for life health insurance. It focuses on describing the intended use, human oversight measures, and mitigating risks specifically to fundamental rights.
Do they overlap much?
A lot. There's significant synergy. Often, you can conduct a single combined assessment or ensure the two reports complement each other. Both aim to proactively identify and mitigate risks before deployment. Some organizations also do broader voluntary human rights impact assessments, HRIAs.
Okay, let's talk more about fairness. GDPR demands it, but you said defining it is tricky, and technical metrics don't always capture legal or ethical fairness. How do you pursue it then?
It's one of the hardest areas, honestly. Everyone agrees fairness matters, but defining it is tough. Is it about individual fairness, group fairness, equal outcomes, equal opportunities? Technical metrics exist for some definitions, but they often conflict, and they might not align with what anti-discrimination law requires, for instance.
So what can be done?
You need interventions throughout the life cycle. At inception, scrutinize the purpose itself. Is it inherently discriminatory? Avoid abstraction traps oversimplifying reality in the model. Innova Hospital's heart attack risk AI must consider that symptoms present differently in men and women, for example. Don't abstract away gender.
Okay. During design?
Focus heavily on design choices. Data quality is paramount: completeness, accuracy, representativeness. UNW needs diverse student data for admissions. Digitoys needs to test on diverse kids. Document everything meticulously. Choose algorithms thoughtfully. Maybe use specific fairness-aware machine learning techniques if appropriate, understanding their limitations.
And after deployment?
Deployment and operation require vigilance. Real-world testing is essential. Continuously monitor for biases emerging over time as UNW's admissions AI starting to favor certain groups unintentionally. Be prepared to recalibrate and actively engage with regulators and, crucially, affected communities. Digitoys talking to parent groups, Innova Hospital engaging with patient advocates. Their feedback is invaluable.
Let's zoom into a specific, very current technology. Large language models, LLMs, ChatGPT, and the like. Huge opportunities, but what are the unique data protection risks?
LLMs are powerful, no doubt. Trained on massive text datasets, they can summarize, translate, generate content, answer questions. Huge potential for efficiency and creativity.
But the risks?
They are significant and sometimes subtle. Data exposure is one. There's a risk, especially with poorly secured models, that clever prompts could make the LLM regurgitate sensitive snippets from its training data.
Okay, leakage.
Then accuracy, or lack thereof. LLMs are prone to hallucinations, making things up confidently. This directly impacts the GDPR accuracy principle if you rely on their output. They can also generate highly realistic misinformation or biased content.
And their versatility is a risk.
Yes, their general-purpose nature. Because they can be adapted for so many tasks, it's hard for the original developer to anticipate all potential misuses. Digitoys using an LLM in a toy needs to think. Could a hacker use it to interact inappropriately with a child? That wasn't the intended use, but it's a risk enabled by the model's flexibility.
What else?
Poisoning the well. The risk that the flood of AI-generated text online or deliberate manipulation degrades the quality of future training data, making newer LLMs less reliable or more biased. Think of subtly poisoning data to make an LLM discriminate against a certain group. This requires serious data auditing by LLM developers. And even open-source LLMs aren't exempt from GDPR if they process personal data during fine-tuning or deployment.
Given these risks, what practical safeguards should organizations use when integrating LLMs?
First, really understand the data flow. How does the LLM process and store data within your workflow? Read the developer's instructions carefully.
Like the contracts.
Absolutely. Scrutinize service agreements and data processing agreements. How long does the provider retain your prompts or data? Are there options for self-hosting the model or contractual clauses limiting their data access? These are key negotiation points.
What about the outputs?
Treat LLM outputs cautiously. They can be personal data. Implement checks for accuracy. Monitor outputs for bias or harmful content. Maybe tweak model parameters like temperature to control randomness. Input and output filters can help block harmful prompts or prevent generation of toxic content, hate speech, etc. But be aware of jailbreaking users, finding clever ways to bypass those filters. It's an ongoing battle.
Okay, last section. Beyond compliance, how can organizations get help navigating this complex landscape? What about things like technical standards or certification?
These are really important support mechanisms. Technical standards provide voluntary guidance. They can define properties like how to measure bias in facial recognition or minimum accuracy levels for a certain task. They help identify relevant metrics and acceptable values.
Are they legally binding?
Under GDPR, rarely. But the AI Act gives harmonized standards, those developed specifically to support the Act, like by Cincinnati's special status. Following a relevant harmonized standard creates a presumption of conformity with the AI Act requirements it covers.
So it makes compliance easier.
It helps demonstrate it, yes. You can choose not to follow a harmonized standard, but then the burden is on you to prove your alternative method achieves the same level of compliance. Non-harmonized standards, like from ISO, can still be very useful guidance even without that legal presumption.
What about certification?
Certification schemes, like those under Article 42 of GDPR, are voluntary processes where an approved body assesses a product, service, or process. Their main role is helping organizations demonstrate compliance with data protection requirements.
And codes of conduct?
Also, voluntary self-regulation. Under GDPR Article 40, industry groups can create codes approved by DPAs outlining best practices. The AI Act has two specific types:
Which are?
Codes of Practice for General Purpose AI Models, Article 56. These are facilitated by the EU's AI Office, offering detailed instructions and metrics. Following an approved code of practice gives a temporary presumption of compliance for those models until harmonized standards are ready.
Temporary.
Okay.
And the other?
Codes of Conduct for High-Risk AI Systems, Article 95. These are voluntary pledges by providers or deployers to follow the high-risk requirements, basically encouraging best practices, but they don't offer any presumption of compliance.
Finally, the AI Act also tries to support innovation directly. Sandboxes and testing.
Yes, this is really interesting. Regulatory sandboxes, Article 57, provide controlled environments where companies can test innovative AI, especially high-risk AI, before full market launch.
What's the benefit?
Dialogue with regulators, guidance on managing risks, especially to fundamental rights, health, safety. DPAs are involved if personal data is processed. It lowers barriers for responsible innovation.
And real-world testing.
The AI Act allows for real-world testing, Article 60, under strict conditions, prior authorization, limited time, explicit consent from participants, robust safeguards. It's for testing in real conditions, but still within a controlled framework. Outside these specific schemes, normal data protection rules apply fully.
So tools to help innovate safely.
That's the goal, balancing encouraging innovation with ensuring safety and fundamental rights protection.
Wow. We have covered an incredible amount of ground today, from those fundamental concepts why AI is a data protection issue, through the entire life cycle, design, deployment, operation.
And into those advanced topics like fairness, accountability, the specific challenges of LLMs, and these really important support mechanisms like standards, codes, and sandboxes.
It really feels like we've mapped out the key risks, the core obligations, and the tools you have available to try and get this right, to develop and use AI lawfully and ethically.
And hopefully, this deep dive wasn't just about reciting rules. The aim was really to empower you, the listener, with the knowledge to ask better questions back in your own context, to spot potential pitfalls earlier, and to really drive responsible AI use, whether that's in your organization or just in how you understand the technology shaping our world.
Absolutely, because that knowledge is probably the most powerful tool we all have when facing technology that's advancing this incredibly fast.
Couldn't agree more.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder. As AI continues its breakneck evolution, and as we learn more about its deep impacts, how might our very definition of personal data itself need to change to keep pace?
That's a big question.
And what new responsibilities might emerge when AI systems aren't just processing data about us, but are actively shaping our choices, our opportunities, our realities in ways we're perhaps only just beginning to grasp?